What level does Nate George end the season at? And speaking of Nate George leaving Delmarva, when does pitcher Esteban Mejia make his Delmarva debut? What are we thinking?
All right. Well, Esteban Mejia, that's an easy answer because I think there's a week left in the FCL season thereabouts. So as soon as that's over, I think him and Jordan Sanchez will be taking a flight together or a drive together, whatever it may be, up to Delmarva. So that's the answer there for me. And Nate George, I think, could get to Aberdeen before the end of this month, and I think he gets a week of play at Chesapeake at the end of the season as a reward and starts back there in 2026.
I love the aggression there with George, but I've got a different answer, which is that I think he will end the year at Aberdeen.
Which is still impressive.
Which is still really impressive. That's still really impressive and way more aggressive than we would have expected the Orioles to be with him coming into this year. I think he'll end at Aberdeen, and I think Mahia, just about when the FCL season ends. So in a week or two, he should be debuting. I guess 2 weeks left in the FCL season. Thank you, Simpkin. 2 weeks left in the FCL season. So 3 or 4 weeks, I think you see Mahia in Delmarva.
Yeah, talk about a rise. I think we're going to talk about him a little bit more in a second, though. But with George, I want to say AA as well, but I will say high A. But it was funny if you're watching us live, then you've got the same hints of the article that Andy just mentioned. His article, but if you're listening on the podcast feed, the article is out now at the banner. His talk with Nate George when he went down to watch Delmarva and speak with him, and I thought it was funny, hinting at he wants to become better at running the bases. And like that's one thing that we've talked a lot about over the last couple of weeks is he's been caught stealing a lot so far. Right. So that is one big key area of his game where it's like, all right, over the next couple of weeks when he's in Delmarva, let's see if those numbers continue to improve. So let's look at the swing and miss. Let's look at the strikeout rate. Let's see if he can continue to keep that at a respectable level. And if he starts doing that and more balls start going over the fence, which I think he is on the verge of doing here, once he settles down just a little bit, once you start to see him kind of settle in and use that, I talked about this last week, I think it was, where he starts tapping into this, that firecracker high ball of energy that he has. I don't even know if there is a word to describe it. He is sonic on a baseball field. If he can kind of harness that a little bit and you start seeing those results on the field quickly, then I'd say AA is certainly not out of the question here, which, and I like Andy's quote of saying, oh, he's a 16th round pick playing like a first rounder. And that's what Colin Woody said. Some people say he plays like Mike Trout. So, I mean, we're looking at quite the prospect here.
It's kind of an insult to Nate George at this point, but I don't see him hitting the IL. Knock on wood.
We'll jump now to this question from Ben Dewhurst. In the same theme, talking about Esteban Mejia. Is him being number 3 on Baseball America's list for the Orioles too aggressive, the emergence of the next big thing, or a little of both? And for those who might have missed it, Mejia was recently ranked 3rd on Baseball America's updated top 30 for the Orioles system. That came on the heels of the outlet bumping Mejia into the back end of their top 100. So
number 84.
Very high praise nationally for Mejia. But what are our thoughts on that? Too aggressive, just about right, or a little bit of both?
Not too aggressive. I mean, Baseball America doesn't do things like this for clicks. I mean, and what clicks would they get? It's just this random, international 18-year-old on the Orioles. I don't think that's bringing home the clicks. I think they were just wowed by Josh Norris in particular, was wowed by his in-person viewing of Esteban Mejia's outing or two that he saw. So, yeah, I mean, we were obviously high on him, especially Nick early on last year. And I think this just enforces our opinion and maybe gets us to where we were going to eventually get a little bit faster because it's more information for us to digest, because Josh Norris went out there and told us the velocities, told us, what he saw, which helps us in our evaluation. And yeah, he's certainly getting a bump up my list after being number 84 overall in all of baseball on Baseball America, the best outlet for prospect rankings and evaluation and analysis, in my opinion. So Yeah, I don't think it's it's too much too soon or helium. Yeah, I think very good chance he's the next big thing. Also, Keelan Murphy back in action today in the FCL at the time of this recording. So get this pair of Thunder and Lightning together in Delmarva sooner rather than later and see what happens.
And considering Keeler Morphe starts of the year with Delmarva, that line in his rehab outing in the FCL today was fantastic. I was happy with it. I think just 2 walks. You go 2 and a third, or 2 innings, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. Pretty decent line. I, I'm a bit more cynical just at the national list overall, like all of them. And this is in no way of saying like, oh, we're better. We watch more of these guys, blah, blah, blah. They know way more than I will ever know. I just, I don't, I think he deserves to be ranked that highly, but I think the cynical part of me is thinking like this is an international pitching prospect in the Orioles system who someone did go see him live. So now they're going to push that a little bit harder because they saw him in person. He has super loud tools. And this is an Orioles system that doesn't have outside of Basayo, on the national scale. Of course, if you're listening to us on a regular basis, you're well aware of who these international prospects are who have been climbing the ranks the last couple of years. But I feel like you can fit a couple of things here by sticking him up this high, in that this is an Orioles pitching prospect and an international pitching prospect. And we saw him live. We got this film. Check this out. It all fits. And we're really going to push this. Again, that's not taking anything away from Esteban here. That's just my cynicism towards these national lists and how they're put together. But I do think he deserves it. But I do think maybe just a slight aggressiveness, just because it's also just fun to have this 18, 19-year-old arm sitting here at number 3 in the Oreo system. And you can say, hey, I appreciate it though, because you can look at this and say, hey, they can scout and develop international pitchers as well. So
If I could take just a small devil's advocate take on that, is that yes, I do agree with what you're saying. Also, we're able to focus more on just one team. Don't have to worry about any others, while these national outlets have to worry about 30 teams all at once. But at the same time, this guy Josh Norris is seeing a bunch of these guys that we're not able to see on other teams and be able to compare Esteban Mejia to them, which also I think could go the other way, could lend credence to the correctness, I guess, of it.
I tend to think that it is somewhere in the middle. Mahia is very deserving. There's no question about that. And the stuff backs up the results. I don't think that anybody would look at what he's done this year and say it's a fluke. It is aggressive, though, in the sense that he's only 18. He's yet to pitch at a full season level. And, if there's one thing I think we can look at his results so far in his career and know that he needs to work on, it's his command. And that's not an uncommon issue with young pitchers. In fact, most 18-year-old pitchers in the minor leagues, I would guess, very broadly speaking, have command problems. So that's not unusual, but it is something that they are going to have to work on with him. And I want to put this out there, though, because I know that we're going to have to answer this question when we do our list in a few weeks for the midseason update. Are either of you at a point where you would put Mahia ahead of Trey Gibson or Michael Ferret? I'll take Braxton Bragg out of the equation because of the injury. So just looking at Gibson and Ferret, who all three of us are very high on, would either of you feel comfortable putting Mahia ahead of him?
Nope. Me personally, no. Just because these guys are, and look, I've said it in the Discord, like we've been high on Gibson, Ferret, Bragg. Well, not Bragg until this year, but Erman, these guys, since they were popping up in Delmarva with these results in Aberdeen and in the national outlets, they just literally do not care until you get to AA, unless you're like a name or a high draft pick, which again, it's fair because of the just amount of guys that you would have to cover there, because especially became noticeable to me when a Baseball America chat after their latest update, JJ Cooper responded to a question about the Orioles have some intriguing arms, any possible top 100 guys in there. And he said, yeah, Bragg and Gibson seem like they could certainly play their way into that. Not mentioning Michael Ferret in the same sentence as those guys means, Ferret's not in AA, so he just doesn't matter right now. So, but for me personally, These guys have done it, and I think they have maybe not the upside that Mahia has, but I think Gibson and Erman and Ferret and Bragg, they obviously have a higher floor, and they're getting closer and closer to knocking on the door of the majors. So I personally am not there yet, but I couldn't argue against it just based on ceiling.
Yeah, if you go just like 100 percentile outcome, like sure, what they still have Kobe Mayo on the list, right? He's their number 2. So
He's like 63 overall or something.
yeah, so yeah, that's right, because they keep guys on their prospect list until they're like 36 years old. But it's I think if you look at 100th percentile outcome, sure, Samuel Basayo, stud, uber prospect. So technically, you take Kobe Mayo off because he's not a prospect. They would have Esteban Mejia is really number 2 on their list. Could you? I mean, this is a tall kid. He's what 6'2", 6'3". He's throwing now 102. He touched 100 last year, I'm pretty sure. So if he's added 2 ticks to the fastball this year, they've got. I don't have the reports in front of me. All the secondaries and
2 double plus potential offerings in the slider and changeup.
So yeah, like you take all that into account. Dylan Beavers, I mean, probably more of like a platoon-ish outfielder, right? But maybe strong side of platoon there in the major league level. Enrique Bradfield Jr., if he's an everyday center fielder, like, I mean, he's speed and defense primarily. How much is he going to hit at the major league level? I don't really see any, to their argument, I don't really see anybody on like 100 percentile outcome basis here. Like who has Esteban Mejia beat? I think that is a tough question. But yeah, I'm not willing to put him ahead of the older guys yet, because these older guys are crushing it in the upper levels and not getting the respect, some of them, that they deserve already.
Yeah, Nick, I think it's a fair lens to look at it through, because if I had to say objectively, Adam Mejia, Gibson, Ferret, who has a higher ceiling, I would take Mejia just because of the age and what he's doing for being as young as he is. But balancing it out a little bit more is where I would favor Ferret or Gibson, because they're doing it at higher levels. And in theory, at least, there's less room for error. I've talked about at length with Ferret what I believe he could accomplish. I think his ceiling is actually pretty high. I think Gibson's ceiling, which, a year ago we might have been happy with back-end starter. Now it's looking maybe a little bit more like a mid-rotation arm. Could be Gibson's ceiling, which would be great for an undrafted free agent. So their ceilings are high as well. But yeah, I think Mejia's, out of the 3, does have the higher ceiling.
Yeah, and this could quickly change for me personally if Mahia hits Delmarva and continues or builds on, gets better than he has been even this year in the FCL. And if they want to next year start him at Aberdeen and he's like Yuri Perez type ascent, then clearly he's going to jump high on our or my list at least. But yeah, for now, yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea of where I want to put him on that next list.
Can we just be one of the teams that Andy referenced that says on the pitching side, they see the analytics and say this will play at the major level, so we're going to shoot these guys up? Yeah, another podcast, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree.